So, it's all ideology. Every single thing, every subject, every conversation, every talking point is ideological. There's just no getting around it. At the end of the day, there's no way to be separated from ideology. Ideology is everything. And everything is, well, ideology. But, you see, it's complicated because if everything is political, which, I mean, it very much obviously is, then does it mean that nothing is political? You know, when everything is one thing, nothing will be. Well, here's the thing. It's really complicated because in this video, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind recently. It hasn't been on my mind in ages. I think it's when I first started out this channel talking about fascism and so on that it first kind of irked me a little bit, but now it's just like, it's all over my mind, and that there is discussing what even is the point, the goal of the right. What even is right-wing politics? What is even the appeal? What does it mean to crave a traditionalist or nationalist society? What is all this order and progress, well, reactionary kind of progress that the right talk about? What is it that they want? Why is there so much focus on order? The idea of a nice society. What is the society that those on the far right wish to achieve? And what is the appeal for them? Why are they drawn into this to begin with? And I think it's a pretty reasonable question. In fact, you could even say it's a simple question. It's just that the answers themselves are very complicated. It's not an easy thing to unravel. But I want to take a swing at it here. You see, fundamentally, the way I see it is that when there is degeneracy, and I'll get into what that is in a moment, there is no true goal for the right. But there's too much degeneracy in right-wingers that there is no real coherent ideology. You think of someone very famous, big example, like Andrew Tate, for example, right? He has, at some points, or maybe still does, I'm not really keeping up with it, owned sex slaves. He's a sex offender. He's a pedophile. He has raped multiple underage individuals. He is the worst person, I want to say the worst person in the world, because I guess there are sex offenders more prolific than him, but still, he is up there for the pinnacle of evil. And yet, he talks about this idea of, he finds women, to live degenerate lifestyles. He would disown his son if he were a degenerate, etc. But he is the ultimate degenerate. There is hypocrisy there, right? And he's the opposite of the kind of man you should be. You should want to be humble. You should want to be understanding. You should want to treat people with respect. And he's a man absent of all such positive qualities. A narcissistic, disgusting monster. To put it lightly. But yeah, a dude with that level of horniness and immorality shouldn't be a spokesperson for any ideology, not be representative, not be the mascot of anyone. But, if you look at someone, I'm just trying to think of people. I can't really think of any right-wingers, honestly, who are about modesty and self-restraint. You would kind of think that's the point when they talk about tradition, right? And they talk about how much they hate degeneracy, right? Which is like, sexual libertarianism, right? And just libertarianism, just hedonism, right? In general, right? But the truth is that I see, many on the right, too many, prolifically, in fact, who indulge in that kind of behavior. And not just that behavior, but who promote that kind of ideology. So many creeps, dude. So many. There's Jesus Christ. And there are so many people out there who have this, who consider themselves conservatives or even worse and have no morality, the thing is that some of them have promoted the most disgusting sexual shit, completely devoid of consent. A lot of these people are sexual predators, a lot of them are pedophiles, and they're just evil people. And, this is what the right really is, and it's ironic because it's the most degeneracy, most degeneration fested cesspool. It's awful. But here's the thing, it's hard to even understand right-wing ideology because it seems a fallacy at first, which it tends to be, because the universal law of all human cooperation, natural law, even in terms of science, but in terms of the written laws, it's all about equality. equality. It's treating people equally, treating people, the same way you want to be treated, To be standing on someone's neck is to be inegalitarian, against egalitarianism, I'm trying to say. And that's the opposite of what true leftists, such as myself, want. We want equality. We want everyone on equal footing. We want people to be treated with respect and to have the same rights and to have equality of outcome, etc., right? And, it's really hard to argue when your ideology is literally pro-authoritarianism, anti-equality. How does that sound good to anyone? Well, it obviously doesn't, and it's unsurprising this leads to so much degeneracy on the right. So much child molestation, so much sex trafficking, so much depraved shit, and also just this horrible attitude toward women where you literally believe they should be forced to be fucking homemaids and take care of you because you're a fucking child who can't take care of themselves and, I don't know, suck your fucking dick. I don't know, disgusting shit like that, No respect for boundaries, consent, human rights, fundamental things of any sane person in any sane society. And, that's what you have, You even say to women who don't want to be wives and don't want to be child rearers or whatever, that they should be forced into the position. I mean, that's a lot of common in right-wing ideology, and it's sickening. It doesn't even deserve a proper response. It's disgusting. It's really, what? Promoting that stuff is really just called being a sexual predator, and you shouldn't be around women. You shouldn't have a wife. You shouldn't have kids. That is your mentality. That it's not based upon her own volition. It's based upon your will. It's gross as shit. So, I mean, pretty much grilling right-wingers here, and rightfully so. I tend not to like them, unsurprisingly, as you might have guessed. But the thing is, I'm trying to think, right? Because this is all in contradiction. You want tradition, right? You hate degeneracy. You hate that kind of stuff. You know what? Actually, Oswald Mosley, I made a video on him a bit ago. He wasn't for forcing women into any positions they didn't want at all, right? He wasn't for forcing them to be, homemakers, into kitchen slavery. He wasn't about that, right? Because he wasn't, subhuman, basically. He was at least understanding that, obviously, a woman who doesn't want to have kids and doesn't want to take care of the kitchen and just, be with a man against her will, all that messed up stuff, right? Forced marriage, forced servitude, who wants a job, wants to be independent, she can do that, right? Even in his own, ideal fascist British society, he envisioned the UK as a society that was traditionalist, right? One that rejected degeneracy and, thus hedonism, right? But he wasn't about forcing women into any positions. No, he knew that was disgusting, of course. He said this one thing, right? Which is that the issue with the capitalist system is that it requires so much labor. It drains workers of so much money that his idea is that if they gave people better wages, regardless of their gender, but typically, right, the man works, so if men could receive better wages, right, for their work, if capitalists could steal less of their money, though, preferably I would prefer if capitalists could steal none of their money. I would prefer if capitalists just wouldn't exist, which, you can just remove them, so that would be better. But anyway, the point is, it's true that if people had more money in their pockets, male laborers specifically, when they come home to their wives, they can actually afford the whole house. They can afford multiple kids. They can afford, for the woman's lifestyle, even though that's pretty much domestic parasitism. You're basically paying for a woman to do fucking nothing. Just pathetic shit. Honestly, submissive as shit, but me not liking that regardless, right? The point is, Oswald Mosley wanted that kind of situation in which, a person could have that traditional lifestyle. The woman stays home and takes care of the kids and, makes dinner or whatever, and the man goes out and he does a traditional 9-to-5 wage labor job. It doesn't seem like a really fair comparison, like a fair trade-off. Honestly, it sounds like bullshit on both sides. You don't need to have kids, you don't need to raise them, and you don't need to add extra labor by doing that. You don't need to, pay for a woman who's not actually doing any productive fucking labor whatsoever, who's not, anyway, listen, my thoughts aside, okay, on marriage and taking domestic situations, and my point is that it would still be good if people got paid more, right? As opposed to forcing them to work more, right? I'm all about the proletariat, big proletarian dude. So, the point is, he wanted people to at least have the choice to have that lifestyle. And you know what? If it is truly consensual, right? The woman consents, the man consents, right? And they want to be together and she wants to stay at home, he wants to go out and work. I'm all for consent. I'm all for, it's voluntary. If it's voluntary and you're choosing it, right? You can just choose not to get married, not to have a woman in your life, right? You're choosing it because that's your choice. So, if you want to do that, then okay, whatever, man. It's still a bad decision, but, so are a lot of things. It's a victimless crime, basically, right? So, okay. So you can do that, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, I mean, there is. But anyway, the point is that Oswald Mosley wanted that for society. And, when you actually remove the, authority element, the compulsion element from like a lot of right-wing politics, you don't find really anything underneath. This is a rare exception, right? Fundamentally, he's saying he feels that women are better suited to be mothers and homemakers, while men are better suited to be laborers. And the right in general, traditionalists really, sexual traditionalists, they think this, they believe this. This is their, part of their ideology. And, while it's not true whatsoever, as, there's no biology for it at all. The point is, that's what they want. And, with choice, anyone can get what they want. I'm all about choice and all that, right? Living the kind of life that you want, But I was thinking, well, what is the overarching ideology? What is the ideology that's in the very center of it? What do you want? What is it that you want? You talk about all this idea. You talk about the society. Okay, picture this, right? You're right. You got the beautiful American landscape, okay? It's like we're in Hutchinson, Kansas, or Topeka, Kansas, or Wichita, Kansas, or I don't know why I'm focusing on Kansas, but I always picture that state as being like the most traditional kind of architecture, though. I'm talking about like classical America, but be fucking wherever, okay? Could be in Alaska, Washington, D.C., whatever. Right, so basically, right, you got that beautiful American neighborhood, right? White picket fence. You got all the happy white people in their white neighborhoods, and you got they all got their cars and their big 2-story houses, and you got the kids running around in the fences and the fucking parks, and everyone's enjoying themselves, and there's a fucking barbecue, and we're throwing some steaks on the barbecue, and we're fucking cooking, we're fucking grilling, we're fucking got the polo shirt, the cargo shorts, we're fucking old, we're dying, that's the kind of scenario where they want they want you to picture, right? Old, happy white people and their sad white kids, right? Running around this neighborhood, no drugs, no fucking gang violence, gun violence, fucking no fucking, bad stuff, no one's addicted to pornography, no one's there's no underage pregnancy. Not that there should be underage pregnancy. What the fuck? Everyone is, happy, sober lifestyle, right? Which again is what you get with the American dream. It's actually what you get with affluence more than you get with anything else, but whatever, right? So you got all these people together, right? And, it's like there's no racial diversity. They're very proud Americans, which is good. It's good to be a proud American. They're living the traditional normal lifestyle, right? And the way I think of it is like, you already had this. You already had this. And what's even weirder is that reactionaries have this mentality where it's like, they think, oh, the gender dynamics, the domestic dynamics have so much changed. Oh, the I don't even know what they say after this. I just say it's changed because if they were to describe how it's changed, I'd realize it hasn't. Yeah, women still take care of the kids, almost entirely the women. It's virtually always a female guardian taking care of the kids, and it's almost always the man working, especially working longer than women. Nowadays it's just that it's because of like capitalism. A worse, even worse version than capitalism exists now than in the past. That women just have to work more than they did in the past. So that's really the only actual difference. Just more wage labor for capitalists. That's really it, dude. But the gender dynamics, exactly the fucking same. So I don't even know what they're talking about. Honestly, I feel like this lifestyle, you can live it if you want. And you can just move to like an all-white neighborhood, right? And there are plenty of all-white cities in America. Not like literally 100% white, but almost entirely. Especially if we're talking about like medium to small cities, like 50,000, 40,000, 10,000, 5,000 people. There are so many societies like that in America, so many municipalities that are just almost entirely white. So I have no idea why the fuck you're complaining. Honestly, it seems like a self-responsibility issue, which is ironic because the right, especially conservatives, talk about self-responsibility all the time, even though, like, you had the self-responsibility, if you care about racial homogeny, to move to one of these areas, as opposed to living in, like, a multiracial society and then complaining about it. Like a faggot. So yeah, I don't really know what you're complaining about, but I don't know how the society is better. It's just a preference. You can have a preference. Doesn't make it better. You know, as though somehow someone's race is a determining factor for a society you want to live in. I understand different racial populations, especially in America, have different cultural attitudes, different behaviors. I understand. And I understand that, you know, sadly, there's a lack of sympathy and empathy from some people of some races towards people of other races, right? I mean, a big example, ironically enough, is the right themselves, having a lack of empathy towards immigrants who aren't white trying to move to the United States, because they should be allowed to move. Their race shouldn't be a reason that they're getting crossed off the lists. That's ridiculous, you know, it's more ridiculous, it's evil, it's depraved, and that could kill evil, because moving to America, you're lowering your mortality rate compared to a lot of other countries. You're living in a state of affluence compared to where you came from, most likely. So, you know, open the gates is what I say. Anyway, the thing is that I don't really know what the point of the right is. They don't know it themselves, and that's because it's a contradiction-based ideology. Authority is inherently unnatural. It's always unnatural. And no shit, something based upon inequality is going to be a terrible ideology. Equality is the natural law of everything. It's the reason I don't owe you $10 and you don't owe me $10 or an unequal amount of money or whatever. No one owes anything by default, alright, to anyone else. That's because equality, we're all equals until, you know, there's some situation that proves otherwise. But until that situation arises, which it rarely does, we're equals, you know? And it goes against natural law, it goes against the Constitution, it goes against the Bill of Rights. Right-wing ideology, you know, it's ironic that liberalism has been corrupted by the right, because the real, authentic liberalism is anything except what conservatives are claiming the founding fathers believed in. It's so weird, it's so strange, it's such a strange ideology. Conservatism and the like, I don't even know what to say to it. But here's the thing, like, if you want to be against, like, a degenerate lifestyle, right? You don't want to sleep around and have casual sex with heaps of people. You don't want to do drugs. You don't want to do alcohol. And even if you're a racist piece of shit, enough of a racist piece of shit to want to move to an all-white neighborhood, hey, look, I'm all about freedom, right? I'm not going to, like, enforce racial quotas in certain neighborhoods. It's like I'm not going to enforce the diverse. I'm not going to prevent people from accessing certain borders in certain nations. You can go and do that. You can go live your life, you know? If you want to have 5 kids and a wife who consents to being a house slave, and you want to be happy, even though you're probably going to be miserable like every other piece of shit who does this, go ahead, dude. Despite the fact that this is happening every single day in America, and every day in most countries in the world, and a massive percentage of all people in pretty much every country in the world do this very lifestyle. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. You know how many European countries are racially homogenous and also have traditional nuclear family couples living this exact lifestyle? People talk about it like it's in the past. Not even for America. It's never been in the past. I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And I bet the reason you feel this way is just because of the internet. Because the internet, you know, the whole digital online sphere gives a different impression of life. But it really hasn't changed at all. Like, day-to-day lifestyle is exactly normal. In fact, if you're alive right now, that means you are a child, well, adult child now, produced from a couple who indeed were or do still perform that traditional lifestyle. Still live out that traditional financial legal arrangement, the spousal arrangement, the domestic situation. I don't even know what to say, honestly. Whatever right-wingers want, you don't actually need it with authority. I know that might be shocking to hear for some people, but you don't need authority to get what you want. You know what you actually need? Self-responsibility. A little bit of actualization in your life. You taking the steps to do what you can. Because going on Twitter, going on Reddit, or fucking, Gab, or the fucking, the Kiwi Farms, whatever, going on these sites and complaining about racial minorities or trans people or whatever the fuck motherfuckers are complaining about now, that's not actually going to make your life better in any way. You're not going to progress in a good direction. You're not going to get happier. In fact, you're just going to stay a sad, miserable, boring old white man. And I don't want to grow up to be a sad, miserable, boring old white man. I want to be a happy, cool, excited, enthralling life living old white man. You know, that's what I want to be. But Jesus fuck, if I had my head in the sand like these bastards, then I would be just like this too. There's nothing you even really have to complain about. You need to take some initiative to do what needs to be done to make your life in accordance with your own ideals better, and stop blaming it on everybody else. Just as I need to do the same for my life, and I have been doing. And my life has gotten better because I've taken such steps. I mean, whatever I'm doing it because I'm passionate about it, and I like it, and I know it's going to make me happier, and it does make me happier indeed. How shocking, I know. But it's also because, like, when inequality is present, when injustice is present, the whole point is to get rid of that. It's not to bring about more injustice. It's not to bring about more inequality. And that's why right-wing ideology is just inherently vile. You know? And why do you think that there are fucking villains who are portrayed as being members of the KKK or the Nazis are seen as, like, symbolic of evil? It's because right-wing ideology is innately evil, as opposed to, like, left-wing ideology, right? When have the Black Panthers being seen as, like, the villains? Well, they're not the villains, you know? Like, seriously, it's just fucking, it's deranged shit. But I just wanted to say, it's like, if you sit around complaining, sitting on your dick every day, and saying it's other people's fault that you're miserable, you're never gonna get better, right? Because you can't change the world, right? You can't change the political structures. The most you can do is vote in the rare instances of direct democracy. Very rare. Especially rare in America. But what I can tell you can do, right, is you can get up off your dick and change yourself. You can't change the world, but you can, indeed, change yourself, as shocking as it might be to some people. Okay, so this is being recorded after the initial audio, where I thought the video would end, and that would just be it. That'll be like all I would say. I wouldn't go into any more details. I wouldn't elaborate any further. But I'm gonna be honest. Rewatching it, it doesn't really sit well with me the way I went about describing things, detailing the facts, or just giving my own perspective on the situation or the the politics and whatever. I don't think I did the greatest job because it's not what I included. It just feels like it's what I left out. That's the issue. There wasn't as much nuance in my little rant as there could have been. And I'll be honest with you, I could have done a better job there. I could have said things better. I could have phrased things better. I could be a bit more understanding. Not that I didn't understand, but I'm just gonna try and put things right now. So, okay, we're gonna go back to ideology. What right-wing ideology, what traditionalist ideology, or whatever terminology you want to use, even is. What is describing this kind of style of government or lifestyle or way of thinking or way of being? What's underpinning it all? And I feel like I was dismissing it a little too much. I give it some thought, but I think that a better kind of way of looking at it is, my issue with it is that when you use force, when your ideology is inherently authoritarian, that's the whole point, right? It implies that whatever you're offering, whatever ideas, whatever ways of living is on the table, they're not very good. They're very bad, actually, because you would need to use force to get people to comply with them, as opposed to people naturally just living the way you want and agreeing to it and yada, yada, yada. And for the record, if some leftists came along and they said, we're going to force people to live the way we want to, then that's bad, right? Just as like a big example, right? Racial and ethnic collectives can indeed be formed voluntarily. A genetically homogenous society doesn't require force. In fact, it would actually require force to break it up. And this is what like panarchy and national anarchism address, right? Actually, that's kind of the crutch, the core of national anarchist ideology. It's that certain distinct social demographics would have their own villages, towns, maybe even cities, whole societies separate and isolated just for them because they want to live that way. And that's okay. I mean, I don't care about, the racial composition of a society. I don't care about that kind of stuff. I've never cared about that in so many years. I don't care. That's not my thing, all right? But I understand some people do care about that. So, we can maybe have a conversation like, is that what you should really look for in a society? Does race matter? That kind of question. But that's besides the point. The point is people should have freedom. I'm a big believer. I'm all about that freedom, all about that America, that American freedom. People should have the right to do what they want. And that means a society exclusively for some people that doesn't discriminate against anyone else, that doesn't infringe upon anyone else's rights. And if that's what we mean by right wing, well, I wouldn't say I'm for it, but I'm not against it. I'm certainly against imperialism, colonialism, one country or one military attacking another society, a settlement, because they just don't like the ideas or the way that society's organized. That's messed up. I'm completely against that. Doesn't matter the excuse, it's always bad. Imperialization. Okay? So but the thing is that you don't need authority to do that. In fact, it's actually an absence of authority with the collapse of governments, you will actually have that arrangement quite naturally. And for the record, before states existed, and states only came into existence about 5,000 or so years ago, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, etc., every society was indeed racially and ethnically homogenous. But also, if people want to live together, if they want to live in a diverse society, then they absolutely can. That's their right to do so, right? That's freedom. That's America. So I'm all about that, right? I'm all about people doing what they want to do, as long as it doesn't harm anyone. I'm all about that, live and let live society, kind of ethics, But I don't think there's anything. There's nothing right wing about a homogenous arrangement, but nor is there anything really left wing about a diverse arrangement. Because all I'm defining right wing and left wing is what they're supposed to be defined by, what they were coined in reference to. It's all about authority. It's all about hierarchy. And there's nothing inherently hierarchical about society formed upon homogeny, or nothing anti-hierarchical about one formed upon diversity. It just depends on how you go about the ethics surrounding how the society is formed, how it's sustained, maintained, and if the people there are voluntarily there, like they're actually there because they want to be there. But that's the whole point. People have to be willing. It's like marriage and domestic situations. People have to be willing. They have to have the choice to exit out of marriage at any time for whatever reason they choose immediately. They have to have the option to enter into marriage if they want to. They have to, marriage is innately a legal agreement, right? It's just legality anyway. So look, if you want to be in civil unions or partnerships, or they want to be together under the same roof, if they consent, it's their choice, right? But there's nothing really traditionalist about this. And again, I pointed this out before, right? In the initial audio, this lifestyle is lived by most human beings worldwide. Like, most people at some point in their life get married, and most people reproduce. You kind of already had that setup, that environment. Your home, most likely where you were born, and, your own parents, they most likely lived that lifestyle. That arrangement was probably the arrangement that you grew up in, statistically speaking, right? Most likely. Obviously it depends on the person, but the majority of people do indeed experience that, right? And so do their ancestors. Well, not ancestors, but the people that created them. And so the thing is that what I don't understand, I guess you could say I do understand, but I just don't like it, is whenever there's like, okay, well, all these women who don't want to be caregivers, they don't want to reproduce, they don't want to be miserable, we gotta force them somehow. Like, this is why you have evil ideas, and I truly mean evil ideas, like attacks on childlessness, right? This is why I'm happy that the Soviet Union was abolished. That was an evil idea, right? Stalin's idea of like natalist policies to increase the Russian population, you know what I mean? And, likewise, they have all these horrible ideas, like wanting to ban abortion, or wanting to like get rid of contraceptives, right? Like, dude, this is messed up, right? A lot of these people are literally against birth control. Like you want responsible parents. You want a good domestic situation, a good scenario for the kids, for the parents, etc., right? And you don't want to, force a woman to give birth against her will. You don't want to take away her access to, protection, same with the man, right? A vasectomy, or, whatever protection you use, right? To prevent yourself from, or someone else getting pregnant, right? It's like, you don't want the child to be raised in that broken home, that terrible environment. If you're this big man of tradition, and you're like, I care about the family, I care about traditional family values, then you shouldn't rush women into marriage. You shouldn't put people into positions they're not financially prepared for, socially prepared for, etc. That sort of arrangement, right? You should instead say you should focus on the quality of the parents and not the quantity of the parents. Actually, that's perfect. Only those who are really, truly prepared, who are the best of the best, should pursue their passion, and something that they're passionate about, right? Their career of being a father or a mother and raising kids, etc. That kind of stuff, right? So it's actually, when you have authority, you tend to have this very issue. You tend to have children who are raised in foster homes, orphanages, and who are disconnected from their original biological parents. And you get a father who's a deadbeat dad who, if at best, pays child support, but at worst, found a way around it to evade it. Not that I could blame him, like that's a lot of money for a kid you don't even love, and you don't want the parents not to love their kids. That's the whole issue. So ironically enough, it's destruction of healthy traditional ways of living, of the way people are supposed to live if they decide to go down that route of parenthood, of, this kind of domestic arrangement, right? They have to be prepared and they have to be good at what they do. Again, it's best to sacrifice quantity in exchange for getting, quality parents and a quality family, So, okay, in that regard, we see that a lot of right-wing ideology, a lot of extreme right ideology centers around, the nation and the state and, being against open borders, wanting to protect the borders, and anti-immigration rhetoric and racism, bad stuff, not good stuff. And the thing is that when you look at an historical scene like Weimar Germany, right? The Weimar Republic, right? You had, all these people, right? These business owners, a lot of them were Jews, right? And you had them, you had bad things, right? Immoral, things that violate consent, like prostitution, right? That's bad. It's always bad. And you had other kinds of things. You had a lot of sexual degeneracy, rightists will say, right? And I guess they're not wrong, There was a lot of there was a lot of gross stuff happening in the Weimar Republic, right? And, Hitler was he looked at it, the whole Nazi party eventually formed around this idea of the Jews are influencing the businesses to do this and this. And I don't really care about, going into it and examining it, because whether they were Jewish people or not, it doesn't matter what the religion or the race or whatever, is that they're still doing this thing. And that's all that matters, right? It doesn't matter what race you are or what religion you believe in. If you're doing a bad thing, you're doing a bad thing. And that bad thing needs to be stopped, right? Legally stopped by the state. So I understand that if they're doing something that violates consent, you're supposed to shut it down. And you should, right? But firstly, Nazi Germany had prostitution. Not just regular prostitution, even though that's already horrible. It had traditional sex slavery. It had chattel sex slavery, not even an exaggeration. So many women who were literally forced to be raped by the government. You talk about Hitler being against degeneracy. This is more about degeneracy. This is depravity. You're about Hitler being a guy of traditional values. If this is traditional values, and I guess it's the Genghis Khan. He's the Genghis Khan of traditional values, like a sex offender. This is depraved shit, So don't get on me the Germans, the Nazis were against horrible things like this. They supported it, not just supported it, they enacted it, right? And this is the same with Imperial Japan, the Japanese nationalists, another far right faction. What they did to South Korean women. It was horrific. It was disgusting. It was evil. All these hostages, all these sex slaves. It was so gross. And, the wounds never heal. For South Korea, it can't. And it's the same, right? It's the same, the problem is imperialism. The problem is authority. The problem is all these evil things. So, okay, rightist factions historically were not really opposed to, these evil sexual acts. They enacted them, in fact. And I really ask the question, when the right say they're against degeneracy, what degeneracy are they against? What degeneracy? Probably none, honestly. I can't think of anything. They talk about homosexuality and transgender people and etc. as though somehow that's bad or worse than what they have. And yet these people live the most disgusting sexual lifestyle. I mean, if you heard of Andrew Anglin, you know what this dude got up to. Oh my God. But there's nothing degenerate, okay, about nothing particularly degenerate about same-sex behavior. I mean, of course, behavior that is sexual in general, that's, kind of degenerate, right? That's what degeneracy means, but it's don't hop on about it. If it's consensual, then it's, whatever. But here's the thing, right? What if you just don't want to live around people who have different lifestyles or different opinions or different, even just racial textures, right? Genetic stuff, right? What if you just want to live in a society that is truly homogenous, right? same religion, same politics, same skin color, same everything, basically, right? You might as well get rid of women. You might as well just have all male orgies all day, you know? Like a futuristic gay porno. You all suck each other off in like this big sci-fi utopia or whatever. I don't know. Whatever you're into, right? Well, that's the whole point of national anarchism. And specifically the idea of panarchy, right? And the panarchist, notion is that each society can be formed on the basis of what the individuals forming it want, or the individuals joining it want. And people can leave in and out of that society whenever they choose. That's the whole point of that, right? But see, the reason that so many people hate open borders is for this very reason, right? Because it's the opposite of panarchy. They hate, closed borders is the opposite of panarchy. Obviously, open borders is full panarchy, right? It's because they want to lock people in, right? Imagine if tomorrow, North Korea was an open border state. It doesn't mean that other countries are accepting them necessarily, the North Koreans, but it means people can leave North Korea. They can legally leave the state. They can go anywhere, South Korea or wherever, go upwards, if they want, or go down. They can go anywhere on the map, Like, everyone would be flushing out of that country, dude. They would be fleeing. It'd be, like, mass swarms be reported. It looked like the fucking be massive traffic jams everywhere. Everyone would be running. They'd be biking. They'd be going fucking wherever they want, alright? People will be getting out of there, is basically what I'm trying to say, right? No one would stick around. That's because North Korea is a bad idea. Right? The lifestyle there, the politics, the lack of freedom, that's a bad idea. That's why North Korea had to erect the borders, right? To keep people in. Not to keep people out, but to keep people in. You get what I'm saying? Because it sucks. Because the country sucks. That's the issue. And ironically enough, the best kind of democracy is the democracy that's automatically created with global open borders. Imagine every country went open borders. There were no more borders. Anyone can exit into a country or exit out of it at any time. No legal documents required. You can go anywhere and stay anywhere forever. Nations would change, dude. So much change would happen. The first thing is that there'd be more pluralism. So this is good for every single political faction. Every different kind of society is built for every different kind of person as a result of this, naturally. Because people want different societies. And when you have freedom of movement, complete freedom of movement, you can go anywhere at any time for whatever reason you want, or no reason at all, whatever. People can just go, So, it's really the same deal. It's like there's a democracy there. Societies now need to change. They need to progress. They need to get better. There's competition. The best societies are the ones that everyone is going to immigrate to, because they can legally go anywhere they want for as long as they want, And the worst societies are the ones that are going to get no visitors. Okay, they're going to get no hostages. No one is ever going to take a trip there. You get my point? The better the society, the more customers come to it, okay? It's just like fast food restaurants competing with each other, right? But without the capitalism, right? So there's no unfairness, right? You remove the capitalism, you remove the borders, and there's that beautiful democratic freedom, right? And that's exactly the thing, right? Is that you don't need authority for your society. If your society is good, people are going to come there, and they're going to stay there. And they're going to stay there forever, alright? They're never going to want to leave, right? That's the best society. It's what the people decide, so there's a democracy there, right? Whatever laws you personally prefer, you can actually live under those laws by just moving to a certain area of land where the society and the way it's governed best suits your personal interests, right? And that's, again, the beauty of open borders. This is why so many people hate it, right? Because it would destroy all the worst societies, and the best societies would get even better. They would keep competing with each other. They would just do the best they can to attract as many folks as possible to keep them in, right? So they don't leave. They don't leave for something better. And this is a revolutionary idea, but it's obviously something that could only happen in like hundreds of years away, right? Being optimistic even. Of course, it's theoretically possible that tomorrow, globally, we'll have open borders. Practically impossible, but, theoretically possible, I mean, it could happen, right? Anything could happen, right? But no, it's not going to happen, obviously. And that's the thing. It's like, with these lofty ideas, it's incredibly easy to enact, right? Every society, it's actually easier. In fact, you don't have to keep people in, and you don't have to prevent people from leaving or going to another country. Well, that's what I just said, but, you're not preventing anyone from going anywhere, right? You wouldn't have to spend so many billions of dollars on border security and child detention camps and other messed up shit like that, It'd be so much better, And you see all this rhetoric that Trump and the like, talk about, like wanting to keep kids in cages and detain immigrants and, ICE and all that bad stuff, right? Like, save some fucking money for God's sake, And it's just evil. It's just evil what they're doing. So there's that beautiful global democracy, right? That Panarchy wishes to form. And it can be formed. It's really easy to form. Any person could be living in these types of societies, but because there's not a global agreement, between nations, right? No one's gonna let them out and no one's gonna take them in. We have the kind of societies we have now, right? No government has any incentive to improve, to stop being evil when its people aren't legally allowed to leave its borders. They're trapped there. They're caged. They're like animals, unable to reach freedom, unable to escape the zoo, just behind bars, behind metal. And it's a shame. But here's the thing. Different strokes, different folks is something I keep saying. And the truth is that whatever kind of lifestyle you want, you could have it if you actually were more open to freedom. We need to be moving in the direction of more personalized liberties, more individualism, and allowing people to choose whether they want to live a collectivistic or individualistic lifestyle. You have to understand what I'm saying. So I think in this conversation, it's like, what do the right truly want? Nothing that benefits them, right? Even something like open borders, something that they hate, right? That would benefit them immensely. It would firstly create the societies they want, because societies and governments are allowed to experiment now, right? So, for example, if a new government were to be formed, it would be like a white nationalist government, right? It would be considered its own white ethno-state, because it would want to attract that proportion of people. Firstly, the people who are in charge, the governors, had that ideology in mind to begin with. And secondly, they want to attract these very people because they're the only people that are actually going to go and live in their society. And that's the same with any kind of niche ideology, right? Whether it's popular or unpopular, whatever it is, these different kinds of ideologies are going to form their own societies and own governments. And that's going to be the portion of people that are going to be attracted to them. Because even the best countries, not everyone's going to live in them. Because not everyone has the same values, the same ideals, as shocking as that might be to hear, I know. But it's true. Everyone wants something different. And while there are certainly correlations, yes, definitely there are some countries that exist today and would exist in, a hypothetical open borders world, right? Where more people will be attracted to them and live in them than other states, right? The truth is that there's still going to be some states that people will live in no matter what. Even North Korea today, there will be some lunatics, like a microscopic amount, right? Maybe like a few thousand, whatever. But whatever, right? Some people who would voluntarily live in North Korea today, even if it didn't change, right? But it went open borders, right? But even with the same policies, there would be some people who would live there. Although the government and the scope in which North Korea would govern would thus massively shrink, right? It wouldn't own as much land as it does to govern like only a few thousand people, if you get what I'm saying, right? That would definitely have to be adjusted to allow other people to make land, you know what I mean? And make their own societies on what used to be North Korea. So that's my whole point, right? And like even today, like let's take not full-blown open borders, sadly, but it's close. You do have the EU agreement, right? And that's the freedom of travel within the European Union. So every country that's part of the European Union, if you have one citizenship, right? One passport for one country in the EU, you can freely and forever stay in any of the other countries that are part of the European Union, right? That's a great idea. Ironically enough, racists hate it, despite the fact that they benefit the most from it. Because if you find that your country suddenly has a lot more like racial diversity, or if you're like a hardcore racist or some whatever reason, and you don't like all the fancy new immigrants, you don't like the change in your society for some reason, you can always just go to a society in the EU, one of the many countries that are more homogenous. And that's the whole point, right? It's the whole appeal. In fact, the amount of languages that are in all these European countries, that's great for immigrants because they actually get to choose. If they're going to one EU country, they can go to any. You know what I mean? If they're allowed into one, they're allowed into any. So they can actually go to maybe one of the countries that speak their language and fit in better. It allows for that kind of choice. It allows for them to have a preference. It allows them to better be adjusted to the culture. And it's the same with nationalists and people who have this like nativist ideology, which I don't support at all. I don't agree with that at all. And I haven't in an eternity. But nonetheless, they can still go to whichever society they find to be the most isolationist and nationalistic and, monocultural. You get what I'm trying to say. So there's no reason to even be against this. It's a terrible idea to be against the EU for this reason or any real reason. It's stupid to be against freedom of movement. We need more of that. So my point is that, whatever the right want, they should actually take a leaf out of their own sayings, right? Their own sentiments that they needlessly, brainlessly repeat, right? They talk about this idea of, oh, they're against degeneracy, they're in favor of tradition, supposedly, and, they're like, oh, I'm all about self-responsibility, I'm all about people, not relying on the government and taking things in their own hands, being responsible, and yada yada, all that bullshit, right? Hypocrites, worse than hypocrites, they don't even believe in this shit, right? It's all a ruse, it's all lies, fabrication. You need to actually start taking a page out of your own book and actually act upon the things you claim to care about. You should take self-responsibility. You should actualize your life to meet the criteria of what you think is what gives you the most happiness, what brings you the most success, what is the most ideal scenario for you, living scenario, or whatever you want to do with your life. You should do that. If I wouldn't do it myself, I definitely wouldn't do it myself. You can do that. You can go live that kind of lifestyle you want to do. Okay? And living that voluntarily means conviction. It means those who do such a thing actually want to experience that. They want to live that kind of life. Imagine if America became a white ethno-state. Imagine how you would never hear the end of how horrible that would be. Every single person, virtually everyone, of every race, would be so disgusted that every day, you never stop hearing about it. It'd be a horrible thing for that to happen, right? Holy fuck. Terrible. Imagine doing such disservice to so many people, making them feel like their country's icky, like they can't even live there anymore. No one would agree with that. And that's why it's a horrible idea. This is what happens when you're so against democracy. You care about what a microscopic piece of shit minority believe against what virtually everyone else believes. And this is the whole problem, right? Again, it's about you taking the steps that you need to actualize the kind of life that you want and not force it upon other people. And that's maturity, right? That is absolutely the pinnacle of maturity, realizing that it's not about other people. It's about you. You don't want to love other people for their lifestyles because they're different from you. Well, you shouldn't hate them for that either. You should just be living your life and focusing on what makes you happy and what's, fulfilling to you. But I see that kind of maturity is lacking in the right, pretty much universally. And ironically enough, ideologies like national anarchism fulfill the whole purpose of what you're looking for. But that's not right-wing. That's not a right-wing ideology, not even slightly. Because that's not what that means. That's not what that term means. You remove authority from the equation, and this can apply to open borders, it can apply to anything. You remove the authority, and you're going to see different ways of life. You're going to see people living the way they actually want to. And, maybe you should be like, for once in your life, just consider, maybe it's the presence of authority, not the absence of authority, that's holding you back. That's preventing you from the things you want to do. But I still believe in self-responsibility, so insofar as you can adjust your life, you should take it. You should change it. You should make life what it should be. And, there are many people, many traditionalists, quotation marks, whatever, who had this sentiment, who expressed this very sentiment. They say the rebirth of the West starts with you, or something like that. That's some bullshit. I don't really care. But it is true, right? Whatever you want to see in this world doesn't come from stepping on others. It doesn't come from, kids in cages or any messed up shit like that. It comes from you, dude. It comes from you taking the steps that need to be taken. At least according to what you personally want. Just don't pretend that what you want is what everyone else wants, or even what most people want.